There are many humanoid races, such as humans, elves, and dwarves. Then there are the demons, who, despite their small numbers, are much stronger than the humanoid races. The two forces have been at war for thousands of years, a conflict that led to the division of the continent of Leandras into East and West. However, when a moderate demon king took the throne 300 years ago, the conflict began to subside, and the humanoid races lived in temporary peace. But in the 5th month of the year 2826, this peace was shattered when a new demon king ascended to the throne and launched a fierce attack on the humanoid races. This attack became known as the Great Invasion. Several human nations fell, and by the 4th month of the following year, 2827, the Gargan Empire, considered the greatest human fighting force, was destroyed. The humanoids resisted by gathering their remaining forces and launching an attack on the demons. Among them was a suicide squad that managed to infiltrate the demon castle to assassinate their king. We see a human warrior attacking the demon king as onlookers prepare to fight. An epic battle ensues between them. Afterwards, we see dead monsters everywhere. Then we cut to the Suicide Squad making their way through the Demon King's castle. We see a knight checking on his friend, Theron, to see if he's okay, and notice drops of blood falling from him. He glares angrily at a female demon warrior who is smiling at him, ready to fight, with a human captive behind her. Theron tells his two friends to go on ahead, saying he'll take care of the demoness. His friends leave him and go. Theron slowly approaches the demoness, sword in hand. Then we see his two friends standing before a giant gate. The knight takes out a small bottle and drinks its contents. Suddenly, his eyes turn red. The knight and his female companion enter through the gate and see a red jewel before them. The knight approaches it, but his companion warns him that red orbs are attacking him. The knight tries to deflect them with his sword, but a red orb hits him in the leg. Another red orb was about to finish him off, but his companion tried to destroy it with her magic staff. However, the orb exploded, killing his companion before his eyes. At that moment, a winged being appears before him and unleashes a barrage of red orbs. The knight readies his sword to face this being. The knight charges the being, dodging the red orbs, and strikes it with his sword. But the being turns its hand into a sword, and they clash. The being then fires a volley of red orbs at the knight. He tries to dodge them but fails. The knight asks the being what this attack is. The being explains it is a high-level elimination spell that destroys everything. The knight decides to use the power of the magic gemstone in his sword to face the being and its spell. Indeed, the knight uses the gemstone's power and attacks the being, who tries to block the knight's attack. But the knight finally manages to pierce the being's body with his sword. The being's body disintegrates before the knight, who then collapses to the ground, dropping his sword and saying, "It's finally over." Silence falls over the place, and the knight feels he is the only survivor. He closes his eyes and remembers his family and friends whom he lost. He falls to the ground, but he hears a sound coming from the red jewel in front of him, which is glowing with a red light. The knight tries to get up to go to the jewel before its magical power gets out of control. The injured knight climbs up to it and reaches out his hand to grab it. He finally manages to grasp it, and as he does, a magic circle appears around him, and the knight starts to feel pain. Then we see a butterfly land on a flower. Suddenly, the butterfly disappears, and the scene changes to the knight waking up in a bed. He looks around and sees he's in a house. He wonders, "Is this my room?" He gets out of bed and goes to the window overlooking the city's buildings. He sees the beauty of the city, but quickly remembers the scene of the fires that were in the city, and his eyes tear up. He thinks he's dreaming. Just then, a girl enters to wake him up, saying, "Wake up, Kyle," but notices he's already awake. Kyle looks at her and says, "Lizzie." The girl, Lizzie, approaches him and asks if his stomach hurts. At that moment, Kyle looks at her and hugs her. Kyle is now sure he's in a dream, but Lizzie blushes and tries to pull away, but he won't let go. She tries to push him away, and they fall onto the bed. Lizzie gets angry and headbutts him in the stomach. Kyle falls back on the bed in pain. Lizzie yells at him, saying she's not emotionally ready right now, and leaves the room angrily. Meanwhile, Kyle is in pain and says to himself, "I feel pain, so this isn't a dream." He pulls the blanket off the bed and finds the red jewel. He holds it in his hand and is now certain this isn't a dream. Kyle looks in the mirror and notices he's younger and has no injuries on his body. He wonders what is happening to him. Kyle goes to the window overlooking the city and sees that the city has returned to its former state. Lizzie is also alive again, and he has become younger. He believes he has traveled back in time. He takes the red jewel out of his pocket, looks at it, and thinks it's the reason for what happened to him. Just then, he feels hungry. He goes to the dining room and sees many kinds of food on the table. He thinks Lizzie prepared this food for him because Lizzie used to come to their house to cook for him and his mother since they couldn't cook. Kyle smiles. He sits on a chair and starts to eat. His eyes tear up because he hasn't tasted food like this in a long time, and he continues to eat. We then see that Kyle has eaten all the food that was on the table. At that moment, someone appears from behind Kyle Kyle and is surprised that Kyle ate all the food by himself. He looks in the pots for food. Kyle looks at him and says, "Theron?" He remembers that he was fighting with him just moments ago. Theron looks at him and asks, "What are you looking at?" Kyle collects himself and asks him the date. Kyle is shocked when Theron answers that it's the 24th day of the 5th month of the year 2823. Kyle yells at Theron, "Are you sure about that?" Theron replies, "Yes." He adds that today is his birthday and that he should consider the meal he just ate his birthday present. Kyle tells him it's a cheap gift. Theron leaves him, saying he's starving. Theron tells him that if he goes and begs Lizzie, she'll make him a delicious meal. Theron leaves, and Kyle says to himself that Theron will do anything to achieve his goals. Kyle wonders, what should I do now? Did I really go back to the past because of some magical power? After that, we see Kyle go to the building next to his house, which we see as his office. Kyle sees a girl reading a book and is amazed when he sees her, remembering that this girl had died. The girl looks at Kyle and says, "It's rare for you to come here." It becomes clear that this girl is his mother, who spent the whole night reading books and didn't notice the time pass. Kyle asks his mother if he can ask her a question about magic. His mother doesn't know if she has an answer to his question or not. Kyle reminds her that she's one of the greatest mages in the city. His mother smiles at him. Kyle asks her if there's a magic spell to go back in time. His mother answers yes, explaining that there are spells that affect time, but they don't know where they are, and no one can use them because it's a matter of magical power. She also explains that even if the greatest mage in history used all their magical energy, she doubts they could travel in time for even a single second. Kyle wonders, even if they used a magical item? His mother is surprised and explains that it's an excellent idea. The magical item could be used as a catalyst to store magical energy. She explains that storing that much energy would take 1,000 years. Kyle replies, wondering about using forbidden rituals. His mother responds, a sacrificial ritual to convert life energy into magical energy. She looks at him and asks where he learned this. Kyle gets flustered and explains he read it in a book. His mother understands and explains that it's impossible, even using forbidden rituals. She adds that he would need the souls of half the humanoids on the continent. Here, Kyle remembers the battle and thinks to himself that it's possible someone sacrificed half the continent's population. His mother continues, saying there is no catalyst capable of storing the magical energy required for time travel. She brings him a book, opens it, and says, I found it. She shows him a picture from the book and says, the legendary sacred dragon's heart is the only option. Kyle looks at the picture and sees that this heart is the same as the red jewel he has. We then understand that the ancient magical kingdom of Excalus flourished for 1,000 years thanks to the sacred dragon's heart, but its energy was depleted, which led to the kingdom's fall. Kyle's mother explains that the sacred dragon's heart is the only thing capable of storing the magical energy to travel back in time, but it has been missing for 1,000 years, and she suspects the demons found it. Now Kyle understands. His mother is happy because they haven't talked this much in a long time, as Kyle had been avoiding her. But Kyle explains that he didn't mean to and apologizes to her. His mother tells him he has become more mature today, as if he came back from the future. Kyle is surprised by her words, but his mother explains she's just joking. She then feels hungry and tells Kyle that Lizzie has prepared food for them again. Kyle replies, explaining that he ate all the food by himself. His mother is astonished, and Kyle explains he couldn't help himself. His mother asks him if today is his birthday. Kyle replies that, as usual, she forgot his birthday. She smiled and replied that he should consider the meal his birthday gift. Kyle wonders in despair why everyone is so cheap with his gift. Afterward, we see Kyle sitting alone outside, looking at the sacred dragon's heart he has. He says, back to the past, and wonders what the heart wanted to accomplish. Kyle is surprised by Lizzie standing behind him. Suddenly, Kyle apologizes for what he did to her in the morning. Lizzie tells him, at least you feel bad. Kyle explains that he did it because he had a strange and disturbing dream. He apologizes to her again. Lizzie asks him about his disturbing dream. Kyle is silent. She asks him, did you see me die? Kyle looks at her and says, something like that. Lizzie then understood why Kyle was so upset in the morning. She smiled, sat down in front of him, and told him she forgives him. She also points out that today is his birthday. She wished him a happy birthday. Here, Kyle looked at her and remembered that her town is close to the demon territories and was the first to be attacked in the Great Invasion. They burned it all down until it was like hell. He remembered losing Lizzie. On that day, he swore to get revenge for her. Meanwhile, Lizzie was calling his name, and Kyle snapped out of his daze. Lizzie asked him what was wrong, explaining that he's scaring her. Kyle replied and reassured her. Lizzie sat down next to him. Here, Kyle says to himself that in 3 years, this peace will end, and that he is the only one who knows it. If he does nothing, he will watch his town burn again and lose the ones he loves. He yells out loud, saying he will change his fate. He stands up and repeats that he will change his fate and the fate of this world, and he swears he will do it no matter the cost. past. Lizzie looks at him in amazement. In the end, we see Kyle writing down the events he remembers that will happen in the future in a notebook. He wonders what he should do. The demons will launch an attack in 3 years, and if he asks people to prepare, they won't believe him. He decides he will kill the Demon King himself, but he backs down from this decision because he knows he can't do it alone with his current strength. He gets up from his seat, goes to his sword, and picks it up. We see Kyle training with a sword, remembering the demonic creature he defeated in the future. The creature throws red orbs at Kyle, which he dodges with his sword, but a large red orb hits him in the face. Kyle explains that there are 3 years left until the Great Invasion, and that he hasn't seriously trained in sword fighting and magic before. He casts magic spells and notices that his magical power has increased. He attacks the creature, but a magical red orb hits him and knocks him to the ground. Kyle realizes that he possesses great magical power, but his body cannot keep up with it. He would die if he went on a suicidal charge. There's no point in dying if he's trying to become stronger and live a long, healthy, and happy life. Meanwhile, Theron and Lizzie were watching him, wondering what was wrong with him. Lizzie says he's strange. Theron says Kyle used to give up after 15 consecutive staring contests just 3 days ago, and Theron, of course, won. Suddenly, a woman appears behind them, asking what they're planning. Lizzie welcomes her, and it turns out this is Layla-san, Theron's mother. Lizzie asks if her son, Theron, was supporting himself. Lizzie tells her he used to beg her for food, which annoys Theron. Layla-san looks at Kyle and wants to know what kind of monster he's fighting, saying he's acting like a different person. Lizzie explains that he had dead fish eyes yesterday. Theron says Kyle's dream was to inherit his legacy. Layla-san explains that a child like Kyle changed suddenly because of a woman. Lizzie is surprised here, but Layla-san sees Lizzie's surprise and explains that she might be wrong. Kyle feels a burning sensation in his back and believes it's due to his magical power. Lizzie approaches him and asks who the woman is. Kyle doesn't understand the question. Lizzie violently grabs him to make him confess. He doesn't understand Lizzie's behavior towards him. She shakes him a lot, and Kyle vomits. After that, Lizzie offers Kyle food and apologizes for what she did, but he was upset. Theron, who was sitting next to Kyle, was happy with the food. Kyle looks at Layla-san and expresses his happiness at her return, as well as his mother's. Kyle asks for permission to ask everyone a question. Layla-san is surprised by his manner. Kyle asks them who has complete influence to control and persuade several countries. Theron is surprised by his question. Layla-san considers his question. His mother answers that the highest-ranking priest in the motherland, Karis, has influence, and Layla-san says Randolph the hero, who defeated the Demon King 300 years ago. Theron explains that elves, dwarves, and humans would listen to him. Kyle understands here that kings, heroes, and priests are the ones people listen to. Therefore, he must become a hero within 2 years. He stands up. Layla-san looks at him and confirms that something has happened to him. Lizzie doesn't see a problem. Kyle is now thinking about the future, and they should keep an eye on him. Theron agrees to this. Kyle asks himself why his back is burning now. At night, Kyle is in bed, surrounded by books. He knows he has the advantage of knowing the future. Theron enters and is surprised. Kyle tells him he hasn't felt grateful that his mother is obsessed with books. Theron sits next to him and asks if he's sure he wants to become a hero. Kyle answers yes. Theron explains that this is not an easy thing to do. Kyle understands this and asks Theron if he has an idea for him. Theron asks him what about defeating the Demon King. Kyle answers him that if he could do that, he wouldn't be stuck. Theron agrees with him. Kyle asks him what a hero needs. Theron answers, power. Kyle replies that power alone is useless. He adds that he thinks he needs money. Theron explains that this is strangely blunt. Kyle says that a hero doesn't accept rewards for saving others, but traveling and adventuring require money. Theron understands that doing so requires funding. Kyle continues by saying that a hero needs connections with famous and influential people, as that increases your fame. Theron starts to worry. Kyle continues that with money and connections, you can do most things, but this is not enough. Theron asks him what else he needs. Kyle replies that a hero needs luck, but not just any luck. They must be in the right place at the right time when disasters occur, so they can intervene and become a hero. Theron looks at him and says, "You mean?" Kyle interrupts him, saying he doesn't mean to create disasters to solve them himself, but he is willing to use all available means, even if they are deceptive. Theron says this is not the saying of a future hero. He asks Kyle why he wants to become a hero. Kyle replies by asking him if he's curious. Theron looks at him and explains that he doesn't feel that Kyle's true goal is to become a hero, but that he wants wants to achieve something. Kyle smiles and replies that he has his reasons and Theron must trust him. Theron stands up and wishes him good luck. He leaves the room. Kyle tells himself that Theron will help him. Kyle opens his notebook and says he will use this for funding. He wants to meet her again as soon as possible. As for fame, if he can do something about the Arkan incident, he adds that time will be short then. The next morning, we hear Layla-san telling Kyle he will go on a trip. She asked him if he told Soraya. Kyle answers yes and that she cried a lot. Layla-san replies that she is overprotective of him. She adds that it's good to explore the world and asked him to take Theron with him. Theron is surprised. Kyle explains that he was going to do that and that he's happy now because he got her permission. Layla-san explained that Theron is a strong shield. Kyle promised her that he wouldn't waste his abilities. Theron here gets angry because he feels he has no say in the matter. Later, we hear Lizzie asking Kyle if he's going on a trip. Kyle answers yes, and that it's in 2 days. So she asked him where he was going. Kyle says he's going to the royal capital, Malad, because he will buy what he needs there and then start the real work. Lizzie here looks at him and asks him to listen to her, but Kyle interrupts her and explains that he won't take her with him. Lizzie gets angry and makes him understand that she trains with the prophecy warriors and that she won't be a hindrance to him. Kyle looks at her and explains that her mother doesn't want her to be in danger. Lizzie replies that she will apologize to her at her grave. Kyle continues that he wants her to stay in a safe place. Kyle promises her that she will be the first person he visits when he returns, and he asks her to wait for him. Lizzie looks at him and says she has nothing to say to him. Kyle smiles at her and says, "Consider it the composure that comes with old age." Lizzie asks him what he's talking about. They're 16 years old, and Lizzie here asks Kyle to promise her that he will return safely, and Kyle promises her that. After that, we see Kyle apologizing to Lizzie for asking her to accompany him to the market, but Lizzie doesn't mind, and Lizzie suddenly sees a creature from the elf and says she is beautiful. Kyle is surprised and leaves Lizzie and goes to the elf creature, and suddenly we see that Kyle remembers her from his future when they were sitting together and she asks him to call her by her real name, which is... Kyle speaks here and says Axis. The creature is shocked and angry and asks him what he said. Kyle is surprised because this is supposed to be their first meeting, and it's a secret name that should not be disclosed. And Axis asks him who he is, and she grabs her swords, but Kyle follows her and asks her to wait. Axis asks him to let go of her hands. Kyle realizes this will cause a commotion, but he has no choice, and suddenly we hear Kyle ordering Axis to sleep, and indeed she falls asleep. Kyle explains that Axis had said before that she had visited Ramarzi, but he did not expect to meet her, and suddenly he remembers Lizzie standing behind him, fuming with anger, who tells Kyle that she knows the creature is beautiful, but did not expect him to approach her so quickly. Kyle looks at her nervously and promises to explain to her that he was feeling lonely without her, but Lizzie interrupts him and says, "What are you talking about? I'm here," and gets angry and insists that she will definitely go with him on his trip. At home, we see everyone at the table, and Kyle says he is happy to meet her, and asks her, saying the name Orza San Alice. Is that right? Axis stands up angrily and tells him that only she and her father know this name, and asks him how he knows it. Kyle hesitates because he cannot tell her now because the event is after 4 years, and that they will fall in love and she will tell him the name herself. Axis explains that she must kill him so he does not reveal the secret of this name. Lizzie looks at her and says wait. Kyle says he will tell her in the end. Axis gets angry and asks him if he knows the importance of the real elf name. Kyle responds yes, and that he will not let her kill him, and suggests to her, until he can tell her, why not apply the contract to prevent him from using her name for evil. Axis is surprised by Kyle because he knows about applying the contract. Kyle explains that contracts are usually made with souls, but in the name of kings, and those who can control elements can grant their real names to bind humans. And he continues that the contract condition is not to tell anyone her name or use it for evil, and asks her what she thinks. Axis asks him, does he know what will happen if he violates the contract? Kyle replies, yes. I will die. Here Lizzie is shocked. Axis retreats and says his life is also at stake, and continues, let's do it if he is serious. But Axis cannot complete the contract now because the moon is not full, and the full moon will be complete in a few weeks, so they must wait until that time. Kyle apologizes because he will leave tomorrow. Axis is surprised, and then we see Kyle's mother crying because Kyle is preparing to leave, and Lizzie reassures her not to worry because she will be with him. Kyle asks her, are you really coming? Lizzie replies, of course, it's settled. Kyle's father wishes him good luck and advises him to take care of his friends. Kyle stands without responding. So Lizzie notices that his father is talking to him. Kyle understands this and asks his parents to take care of themselves. His mother cries, and Kyle goes with Thyron and Axis, and Lizzie follows them. And while walking, Thyron expresses that he is happy. A beautiful creature like Axis is joining them on the trip. Axis explains to him that she is not with them and is only with them to monitor Kyle. Lizzie asks Kyle, isn't the capital in the other direction? Kyle smiles and says says let's leave that for later. And he continues, since Orza, the element controller, is with us, she replies that she is not from their group, and Thyron and Lizzie applaud. Kyle continues that they will first go to Sandgard Mountains and asks them about the Sandgard legend. Lizzie responds, isn't it the legend about the magical kingdom of Axarls? Thyron also says the one about the magical princess's maze. That place is just a legend. Kyle approaches them and explains that he actually has a map of the place, and it shows the treasure room. Lizzie looks at him in despair, and Thyron says Kyle was tricked by a fake map, but Kyle insists it's real. Lizzie apologizes that he wants to believe that. Thyron explains that people interested in money end up miserable. Kyle understands they won't believe him now. But Axis suddenly says the map is made from a magical tree over 1,000 years old, and this technique was lost long ago and can no longer be made, and she believes the map is original. Thyron suddenly believes Axis's words because beautiful women's words are trustworthy. Lizzie looks at the map and says it's a vast place, and asks how long it will take to reach the treasure. Kyle reassures her that he has a plan, and Lizzie and Thyron ask about the plan. Kyle says we'll dig, and we see Kyle and Thyron digging, and Thyron asks why they are digging a tunnel. Kyle explains to him that they are making a shortcut to the treasure, because the maze is large and full of traps. Thyron is shocked by Kyle's words, and Kyle continues that there are also gases and magical weapons. Thyron angrily asks Kyle if all this was explained on the map. Kyle hesitates because he knows all this from previous troubles, but tells Thyron that the maze is legendary and they must be careful, and continues that when he said he wanted to become a hero, he did not know the first thing he would do is dig a tunnel. We hear Axis say why they are using a dwarf's soul to do this. Kyle explains to her that this saves them buying magical equipment, and Axis asks Thyron to stop digging because she has not finished reinforcing the walls. Thyron asks, what is this? And she tells Kyle to use detect magic to confirm the direction of the treasure room. Thyron asks Kyle why Orza seems more interested now. Kyle says she is a serious girl. Orza orders them to stop talking. At night, friends have dinner, and Kyle says it's very delicious. And Orza also feels the food is refreshing after the effort she used in soul magic. Lizzie asks them to eat, and Orza asks her if she caught this bear. Lizzie replies yes. Orza asks if she caught it in a trap. Lizzie answers that she caught it with her hands. Orza is surprised. After some time, we see Kyle looking at the map and saying, we're almost there, and Orza comes to him and asks about Thyron, who is not back yet. Kyle explains that Thyron said he would take a break, so Orza asks him why he wants to become a hero, and looks at his rings and asks if they are part of his training. Kyle replies that each ring doubles or triples his body weight, and continues digging and says he is currently improving his physical fitness. So she asks him why he is enduring all this, and if it has to do with knowing her real name. Kyle does not answer, but at this moment he shouts and says we've arrived, and asks her to call Lizzie and Thyron. And we see Kyle hitting the wall and it falls, and we see the treasure in front of them, which they look at in amazement, and Thyron runs to the gold madly. Kyle demands they maintain their focus, and reminds them that they only need money to achieve his goal. Orza agrees, and Lizzie too, and he asks them to look at Thyron, who has lost his mind to the money. At this moment Kyle says this is his chance, and he leaves them and goes to the room with the sword. And suddenly a girl appears in front of him and says she is amazed that a human has arrived here.